Yeah. So guys, welcome you all in this editorial session. This is a session that will be uploaded on YouTube after completion of session. Okay. So welcome you all. So the thought of the day is it's not about perfect, it's about effort. So it is saying that everything in this starting is not perfect. When we start something to do, we by our efforts become perfect. Yeah. Okay, so let's start the session. Yeah, the title of the session is Sticking to Commitments. Sticking means to be stand still on a statement to walk the walk, right? Okay. So on India's climate change goals, India must set an example by balancing energy use and climate goals. Yeah. So on India's climate change goals, the author is saying that India must become an example by balancing energy use and climate goals. India, since so many years, is taking its target to reduce carbon emissions and become a country that will be an example of green energy. Scroll it. Ahead of the 27th Conference of the Parties of the UNFCCC, COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, in November, the Union Cabinet has approved India's Nationally Determined Contributions (NDC), a formal statement detailing its action plan to address climate change. Yeah. So, the 27th Conference of Parties has been decided to be held on Egypt in the city Sharm el-Sheikh, and on the Thursday, the Union Cabinet has come with a notification that is the updated NDC, Nationally Determined Contributions. Nationally Determined Contributions is a non-binding national plan that is related to the climate targets that a country follows in upcoming years. Yeah. The 2015 Paris Agreement requires countries to spell out a pathway to ensure the globe does not heat beyond 2 degrees centigrade and endeavor to keep it below 1.5 degrees C by 2100, means the beginning of the 22nd century. The Paris Agreement that held in 2015 requires countries to spell out. Spell out means to make something very clear, and pathway means a way of achieving a specified result. The result of the globe making by the beginning of 22nd century, making it achieving the target of 1.5 degrees C. Paris Agreement in the year of 2015 was the international treaty which was aimed at limiting global warming below 2 degrees centigrade, and 1.5 degrees C means preferably to 1.5 degrees C compared to the pre-industrial level. Yeah. The subsequent COPs are a quibbling arena where countries coax, cajole, and make compromises on the cuts they can undertake over multi-decadal timelines with the least impact on their development priorities. It's a kind of irony that author is saying. Irony means a vyang kind of thing that author is saying that in the subsequent COPs, the COPs conference of parties is happening from the year of 1994 only, and the subsequent COPs are a quibbling arena, means quibbling arena means the action of raising objections about a matter that is not worth, right? So quibbling arena, which countries coex, cajole, and coex and cajole basically means fuslana, that we persuade something, we persuade somebody very gently, and make compromises on the cuts they can undertake. Yeah. So if we talk about the UNFCCC, the full form of UNFCCC is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and it is targeted on tackling the threat of climate change. But what the countries are doing, they are making compromises on the cuts that will have least impact on their development priorities. If we will take the targets of climate reducing the carbon, we must have to compromise with our development priorities. That is reducing our carbon emission. Mainly the manufacturing industry and industries are responsible for carbon emissions. So we must have to compromise with our development priorities. So that's the author is saying. Please scroll it. While the end product of the COP is a joint agreement signed by all member countries, the real business begins after, where countries must submit NDCs every 5 years, mapping what will be done post 2020 to stem fossil fuel emissions. India's first NDC in 2015 specified 8 targets, the most salient of them being reducing the emissions intensity. Okay, so let's start by the beginning. While the end product of the COP is a joint agreement, Conference of Parties, we say UNFCCC, a conference is called Conference of Parties. It's a when we plan for when we decide our targets for upcoming year in Conference of Parties, it comes with an agreement that basically all the countries, there are almost 197 to 198 countries are there in the Conference of Parties. They come with an agreement that is signed by all the member countries, but the real business begins after. But the real thing is that where countries must submit NDCs, means that every member country should uh, submit NDC. NDC I already mentioned. NDC is a plan for climate related targets. That what the targets are there, which a country will achieve in upcoming years. So the author is saying that every country must submit their NDCs in every 5 years, mapping what will be done post 2020 to stem fossil fuel emissions. Yeah. So the NDC, which will be based on the targets that what our country will achieve, what our country will do to stem. Stem means to reduce something that is spreading, so spread of carbon emissions or fossil fuel emissions. India's first NDC in 2015 specified 8 targets, the most salient of them being reducing the emissions intensity of, scroll it, GDP by wait yeah by 33% to 35% of 2005 levels by 2030. Actually, the first NDC was introduced in India in the year of 2015, and it was specified at 8 targets. The targets the author is describing, the target that India will reduce its emissions intensity of GDP by 33% to 35%. That will be based on the 2005 levels, that what was there in 2005, the total emissions, and what will be there in the year of 2030 will be less than 33% to 35%. Having 40% of its installed electricity capacity sourced from renewable energy. Yeah, having 40% of its installed electricity capacity. We are now India is generating its electricity by the use of coal, but now onwards India will use the renewable energy with its best capacity for the electricity generation and the power generation, and creating an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through forest and tree cover by 2030. Carbon sink means that any body, let's say ocean or forest, that absorbs carbon. Yeah, the most. Yeah, okay. So scroll it. Being a large populous country, India has high net emissions but low per capita emissions. Now, author is saying about the status of India on the field of carbon emission, that India, being a populous country, India, because it's a developing country, it is now working on its manufacturing sector and industrial sector. That's why the net carbon emission of India is very high. But when we divide the total carbon emission of India by its total population, we see that it's very lesser than that of other developed countries. It has also, by participating in COPs for decades, made the case that the existing climate crisis is largely due to industrialization by the US and developed European countries since 1850. Now the author is saying that India is participating in conference of parties for decades. India is participating in conference of parties since the year of 2002, means 2 decades. Made the case that India in every year in the conference of parties emphasized that it's not developing countries that are responsible for the high emission of carbon, but it was Europe and USA, that the developed countries are mainly responsible for the climate change, because since the year of 1850 these countries are responsible for high carbon emission. However, years of negotiations, international pressure, and clearer evidence of the multidimensional impact, scroll it, Leo, yeah, multidimensional impact from climate change have seen India agree to move away from fossil fuels over time. Despite knowing the fact that mainly developed European and USA, developed countries, Europe and USA are responsible for the high carbon emission, India consider that the impact of carbon emission will be on every country all across the world. So every country must agree to move away from fossil fuels and to switch away on renewable energy sources. That's the author is trying to say in this sentence. Yeah. Next paragraph, scroll. At COP26 in Glasgow in 2021, Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid out 5 commitments, or Panchamrit as the government references it, which included India. In the year of 2021, the COP26 was held at Glasgow, and there Prime Minister Narendra Modi came with 5 commitments, that is called Panchamrit, and the 5 commitments were mainly which included India increasing its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030 and achieving net zero by 2070, or no net carbon dioxide emitted from energy sources. So the next sentence is saying about the target and the commitment that Narendra Modi came up with in the Glasgow summit. That was that in that India will make electricity, generate power by using non-fossil energy, means non-fossil energy and non-renewable energy by the year of 2030, and India will achieve net zero by 2070. Actually, the net zero does not mean that by the year of 2070, India will completely reduce its carbon emission by zero. Not exactly that, but the thing is that India can increase its carbon sink that will absorb the carbon dioxide emitted by India. So that's the point. However, the press statement on the cabinet decision was silent on whether India would cut emissions by a billion tons, and on creating carbon sinks. Yeah, that I already mentioned, that it's not only that India would cut emissions by a billion ton, but the another possibility is that India will create its carbon sinks, India will increase its carbon sinks. So India is not clear about choosing the both the options, which option India will choose. Yeah, next para. While India is within its right to specify its emissions pathway, it should not at any forum promise more than what it can deliver. as this undermines the moral authority that India brings to future negotiations. Yeah. While India is within its right to specify its emissions pathway, India on the platforms, on international platforms, on the legislations and meetings is every time specifying that what will be the pathway of India to reduce its carbon emissions. The author is saying that it should not, means India should not at any forum, at any platform, promise more than what it can deliver. I already mentioned that India is a developing country, and it's now going on its working on its manufacturing sector, working on increasing its industrial sector, and it will take so many years in the future for India to become a developed country. So for India, it's not very easy to reduce its carbon emission in upcoming years. So India should not promise what India cannot do. That's the author is saying. And if India do so, it will undermine. Undermine means to make something weaker. India will make its image very weaker in international platforms in the future negotiations. India has expressed its intent via several legislations to use energy efficiently, and many of its biggest corporations have committed to shifting away from polluting energy sources. India has expressed its intents. India is highly intended to reduce its carbon emissions via, and India has said this point many times
How are you
in
guys?
several
What are you doing?
legislations. Mm. And many of its biggest corporations have committed to shifting away from polluting energy sources. Yeah, and in the recent years, many of the corporations have been using renewable energy resources work for their work, and it has shifted from polluting energy resources. If we talk about NTPC also, it is now working on shifting away from coal to use as a source for electricity generations. It is working on solar panels. Going ahead, these should
Ma'am,
be
sorry for
grounds
the
for
interruption,
India.
ma'am. Sorry for the interruption, yeah. Sorry for the interruption.
Going ahead, these should be grounds for India at its pace to be an exemplar for balancing energy use, development, and meeting climate goals. Going ahead, so concluding the editorial, author is saying that these should be grounds for India at its pace, means at the speed of what India can deliver, to be an exemplar for balancing energy use. Means exemplar means serving as a good example. That the title paragraph was also saying that India must go on the direction that it can become a best example for balancing energy use, development, and meeting climate goals. So that's all about today's editorial, guys. The the tone of the editorial. Uh, so anyone can guess what is the tone of editorial? I'm not very sure about the tone of editorial.
I thought the author is trying to convey all informative knowledge about climate change. Also, whatever India tried to help the world to decrease the fuels and also air pollutions. So, it tone of editorial might be informative. Yeah.
What does it mean by tone of editorial?
The tone of editorial means what is the author is trying to express by writing this editorial.
I think this editorial, the tone of editorial is related to environment achievements that we
It's
have
I
progressed
believe
since last 70 years.
it's reporting and analytical tone. Reporting and analyzing.
Okay. Yeah,
Reporting in
because
the
there are
sense
too
that
much data also about carbon sinks and environment achievements like one carbon dioxide reducible achievements like 1.5 before 2100. 1.5 degrees
Yeah,
Celsius.
basically the tone is analytical and reporting.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. This class, this editorial session will be uploaded on YouTube on the channel of English learners. So please watch it. Thank you.
You guys, yeah, and try to subscribe our YouTube channel. That's link is already pinned in group chat. So hope so you will help us with one subscriber on YouTube. Thank you.